Big Secrets Yoga and Astrology video blog, and today we're going to be dropping some truth bombs on the skeptics, right? Actually, today I'm going to lay out my case for astrology, rebutting the skeptics, and of course, being in this field and going on Periscope and stuff like that, I've had my fair share of skeptics, and I've ran into two kinds of people: people that are outright skeptics that are not going to believe you regardless of what you say. Then there's people that are kind of like, well, like actual skeptics that are open-minded but just aren't actually convinced that astrology works. So I'm going to be laying my argument out here for the best arguments I've seen, at least for in my practice, of how really astrology, there is something there and it needs to be studied more, and it shouldn't just be brushed off as a pseudoscience. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with some of the most common arguments that are made against astrology. So these are the ones that I have heard, at least. Astrology is not a science, therefore it is an invalid practice. Astrology is too vague. Astrologers deliberately speak in vague terms. Both kind of the same thing. Astrology has no connection to human behavior. Astrology is inaccurate. Astrologers are con artists. There is no empirical evidence that astrology works, which kind of is a little bit of a dovetail into the science aspect, but I thought it was big enough of a subject to kind of branch it off a little bit. So let's start with this one. Astrology is not a science, therefore it is an invalid practice. And here we have the Pope playing with some test tubes and stuff like that. So unfortunately, astrology seems to fall into the religion versus science debate. And it's really not astrology. How do I put it? Astrology as a practice does have religious, like kind of like a religious past. So going back to the ancient days, all the way back to ancient Sumeria, astrology was part of the religion. And actually Vedic astrology does fall into the technical religion of Hinduism. But even in Hinduism, it's part of the Vedic sciences. So okay, so let's first take a look at how do we define science? It's a noun, the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structures and behaviors of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. Okay, hopefully you got that all. I'm assuming that you all can read. Now, astrology uses a systematic methodology for studying outcomes and data points through the birth chart. So yes, we actually do conduct experiments and stuff. It's just that we use a different methodology. It studies the structural behavior of persons and events at the subconscious level to determine the most likely outcome based on those traits, how a reaction to those events will occur. So really when we're talking about astrology, a lot of skeptics don't understand that when we're looking at a natal chart, we're actually looking at somebody's subconscious profile. And in the Vedic tradition, that subconscious profiles were called samskaras, and that actually relates right into astrology. I'm sorry, yoga. That's why I call this this channel No Big Secrets Yoga and Astrology, because at least in India, yoga and astrology are very deeply interconnected into what they consider Vedic science. And even part of Vedic science is Ayurveda, which is the study of the health. It's an Indian health practice is probably the best way I could sum it up. Astrologers do conduct experimentation and case studies of charts and people and we do try to improve this practice. So a lot of reputable astrologers will start gathering charts. And so what we do is we look at a chart, we see the outcome, we look at another chart, we see the outcome, and then what we should be doing is taking the outcome of our observations and writing books, publishing studies, and other case studies in the actual empirical evidence that we collect on our own. The thing is, there is no actual body studying astrology that I know of, and there is no set of methodologies laid out to get direct empirical evidence that I know of. The Vedas, but one thing I do want to tell you is that when we're talking about Vedic astrology, which is my primary source, there are books called there's a couple of them, actually like 3 of them I think, that we use as reference. So there's the Parashara Horashastras, which is written by Parashara. Sorry if I mangled that. And that's one of the main books of astrology, and that was written about 2,000 years ago. And then there's the other one the Jaimini Shastras, which is about Jaimini astrology, which is another one that's about 2,000 years old. So there are sources that we use in the ancient text. All right, astrology is too vague and you speak in vague terms, something that I hear about a lot. All right. This is a valid criticism of horoscopy, which is based on sun sign astrology. So here's one of the things that, and I'll get into this more, is that there's a very different perception between the actual practice of astrology and the stuff you read in the newspaper every Sunday or you read online. And so this basically means true astrology takes into consideration signs, planets, houses, and aspects, which leads to a very acute portrayal of a person. So really, if you're taking horoscopy, we're looking at 12 signs, all right? And so if you're going to take that and try to branch that out into the chances of somebody having the same horoscope as you, yeah, that's a valid criticism. It's 1 in 12. So I would really understand if somebody had that view of astrology, how they would say, wait, this is crap, because that is very deliberately vague. But if you take into the whole account the full practice of astrology with the signs, houses, and planets and things like that, you get so many data points that it's very difficult to have two people that have the same horoscope, although it can happen, but the chances are very rare. And the chances of two people that have the same birth chart going to the same astrologer, seeing astrology at the same time is very low. Now, however, if we're talking about the case of twins, Vedic actually does have a system called the Varga charts where the birth chart changes every 45 seconds. And that's how Vedic astrology differentiates in between twins. So that's something else that a lot of other people don't know about. So, it's just another, it's also kind of like an ignorance into the full breadth of the study of astrology. Many skeptics have not, and this goes to the next point, many skeptics have not studied astrology and therefore are not qualified to make an unbiased opinion on whether it works or not. And it looks like I spelled weather there. But anyway, speaking of rain, it's in Phoenix, it's not raining. So yeah, this is one of the things that I find with skeptics. They really haven't studied astrology. They don't really know astrology. They don't understand the full breadth, scope, and everything that astrology has to offer. If they did, they would be able to make a more informed opinion. So I don't, I'm not a scientist, okay? I didn't go to school for science, and therefore I'm not qualified to make actual scientific opinions on many things. However, I've studied science enough. I went out and I understand the methodology to understand it enough where I can make the rebuttals to these arguments. So I would ask skeptics, do your research, okay? Astrologers are guilty of watering down the practice, which is taken to be the real practice by skeptics. So this is going back into the whole point of horoscopy versus astrology. If I found a skeptic that actually studied astrology and then debunked it, that would be a different case. Next, I just want to show you, this is a Vedic astrology birth chart. This is the chart that I give to my clients at the time that they book a consultation. This is actually just page 1. And if you can look, just by looking at all this doesn't make, a lot of people say this is Greek to me. Well, it's actually Sanskrit. But I mean, astrology being Greek, I mean, look at all these data points here. If you don't understand these data points, if you don't know how to correlate it with each other, with each other and the person, astrology is not going to make sense. But even on face value, if I throw out all these data points and you're going to say this is all crap and gobbledygook, it goes to show you that it tells me that you haven't put the time and effort to actually understand this stuff in order to debunk it. Next, astrology has no connection to human behavior. And we got the guy with the little pedaling. I was trying to find a picture with like the planets and stuff like that. But okay, so let's talk about actual science and science that has been done to astrology for, I think it was like 1983. Wow, that was like 35 years ago. Anyway, the Carlson experiment conducted in 1983 came to the conclusion that astrology is not better than chance. However, upon reevaluating the evidence, the criteria placed on the astrologers were not reflective of astrology practice. Reevaluation showed that astrologers were more accurate than chance. So if you want to go up and if you actually want to take a look at the Carlson experiment, it was actually published in the Journal of Nature in 1985, and they came to the conclusion that astrology doesn't work. But the thing is, what they did is they gave the astrologers a set of charts, but they didn't have the exact same criteria as it would have during a regular consultation. So like the gender of the person, when you're in front of somebody, just specifically the gender of the person plays a lot into that. So if they would have conducted the experiment differently upon revisiting these things, they would have gotten different results. No empirical studies have been conducted using Vedic astrology, which uses more data points and to calculate charts. So once again, I'll refer you to this last slide. I don't know of any Western empirical studies that used Vedic astrology to try to see how accurate it was. If it were, I'm willing to garner that they would have gotten different conclusions. Science is starting to change its focus on the study of consciousness and how it interacts with matters such as biocentricity and Dr. Hamroff's study of microtubules. Those are just the two that I like to use. So when a skeptic says that there is no proof of astrology or there is no scientific connection, I tell them that the jury is still out on that yet. So it really depends on what kind of perspective you're going to take when it comes to, approaching something. And I can actually see this. So really inherently, science is going to want to take the skeptical approach to try to falsify something. And honestly, I really do understand why they do that, because when you're trying to get a baseline of something, that is the smartest way to take it. Whereas in astrology, we're taking stuff that's already there and we're trying to fit truth into that particular framework. So it's really a matter of how you study the framework of truth. It's not that one validates the other invalidates one. It's a matter of how do we take these and put them together to get something that's a lot better. Bottom line, we need more empirical research using different methodologies. So somebody really needs to step up and do I really want to see a scientific experiment of Vedic astrology, because that might help actually put some of this to rest. And I will tell you what, if a study comes back of Vedic astrology and there is a resounding overall evidence that it doesn't work, I'll quit my practice. Next, astrology is inaccurate. What exactly do you consider inaccurate? And so this is one of the things that I come into. It's like, all right, here's what I tell people. If you want me to predict that you might fall on a banana peel in a parking lot tomorrow and what store it's going to happen at, I'm just going to be telling you that you should just walk where you're stepping, or just look where you're stepping, right? I mean, when it comes to the major things, and I will tell you this, Vedic astrologers tend to claim 80% accuracy, which seems to be accurate according to my personal observations. These are over the hundreds of charts that I've done. Specifically, I have seen great accuracy in predicting childbirth timing, birth order, beginning and ending of relationships, and career choice. I have seen this work over and over again, and you can actually go to my website and see all my reviews. When I actually do an astrology reading, I pretty much go in blind. I really don't know much about that person. I mean, of course, I do know the gender, their age. We have a little bit of correspondence, but really to guess that somebody what their birth order is, not knowing if they have any siblings, that's pretty accurate in my opinion. And if it weren't working, I wouldn't be doing it, right? The relativistic nature of astrology makes it difficult to determine actual accuracy, which is dependent on the observations of the recipient and the experience of the astrologer. So good astrologers give good results, bad astrologers give vague and bad results. It's really a matter of how much experience that you have. And so really, I think as astrologers, we need to do a better job of fighting back against the sun sign and horoscope astrology. I mean, astrology has been so watered down in the Western world that I really understand why people have a view of why it doesn't work. It's because it's being done wrong. Okay. And I just want people to it's really the accuracy of the accuracy of astrology is really dependent on the astrologer. Astrologers are con artists. All right. Yeah, that's me. What is that? I forgot what movie this is. I think this is from Catch Me If You Can. So any practice is only going to be as ethical as the practitioner. Yes, there are people out there, and I will tell you this. I will admit that there are a lot of people in the field of astrology that are charlatans. Yes, astrology has been used for thousands of years to take advantage of people. That's wrong, and astrologers should not be doing it. And if you are an unethical astrologer, you should quit the business and stop screwing around with people. I will say that right off the bat. That's wrong. Now, one thing I do want to say is a couple of things I want to say. I have a lot to say. The nature of sun sign astrology and horoscopy have ruined the practice of astrology, leading to the dilution of its efficacy. So really, if you use sun sign astrology, like I said, yeah, I know I'm kind of repeating the same points here, but they all kind of dovetail. Some of these problems actually cause and they uproot some of these problems, or like the roots of these problems. And the problem with sun sign astrology is it's diluted the efficacy of regular astrology, like the traditional astrology that I practice, and it makes it very inaccurate. And there is no professional or accredited source to validate an astrologer's experience or skills that the public can relate to. So this is one of the natures of the beast. So there are certifications, but what we really need is we need an accredited institution where astrologers can go and demonstrate their skills. They actually do have this in India. And in India, they're fairly good at trying to get this stuff at least sorted out. So there is a kind of like a methodology of practice, okay? All right. And of course, there is no empirical evidence that astrology works. Show me the empirical evidence. Anyway, yeah, go see Jerry Maguire. All right, astrology does not have empirical evidence, but that evidence is based on measuring what literature we have versus people doing more research, meaning it has contained results within its own framework. So this is going back to what I was saying earlier about the relativistic nature of astrology. Astrology does have basic frameworks, but not so much that we can say, okay, all astrologers practice this way. And one of the things is, I think if we did that, a lot of astrologers would stop doing it, because one of the advantages of being an astrologer is it does give you some creative freedom, and there's areas there that can have more research. So as time goes on and as we pay more attention to this stuff, I think this will get better. And simply put, more research needs to be done. Astrology is not perfect, and it can be made better. And I think going back to one of these points here, I was going to say about the efficacy of astrology. Vedic astrologers tend to claim that there's an 80% accuracy, which seems to be accurate according to my observations. I think I left the 80% part out. So, all right, that is all I have. So yes, let's keep having this debate. Please comment below. Let's get something really going here so we can really start having an honest conversation about this stuff rather than just throwing it out as pseudoscience. Because honestly, if skeptics really took the time to understand and learn astrology, they wouldn't be throwing it out. All right, that's all I have today. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. And of course, I am always open to new ideas. I was trying to turn off the stream here. I'm always just like, what the hell? Why is he looking over that way? It's because my other monitor's over there. All right, so yeah, let's have this debate, and I hope you liked what you saw. And of course, if you want to book a consultation with me, go ahead to the front banner page and